The removal of fuel subsidies in Nigeria has led to a significant drop in petrol importation. This development is raising concerns and discussions across the energy sector as the country navigates through changes in fuel consumption patterns, government policies, and refinery performance. In a surprising shift, Nigeria has witnessed a marked decline in petrol importation in recent months. This comes after years of being one of the largest importers of refined petroleum products, despite being Africa's leading crude oil producer. In its recent statement, the National Bureau of Statistics reported that petrol imports dropped by over 3.58 billion litres. A development experts in the oil and gas industry are watching closely. While some see these as a positive step towards energy independence, others are concerned about the impact on fuel prices and availability of petrol across the country. As the situation unfolds, the Nigerian government continues to reassure the public that it is taking all necessary steps to stabilize the energy market while encouraging investments in the local refining sector to ensure that Nigeria's fuel needs are met without relying heavily on imports. However, for many Nigerians, the immediate concern remains the costs at the pump. On our program, Nigeria Today, we'll look at the drop in petrol importation. Welcome to the program. I am Ikaria Clinton, and thanks for joining us. Now, joining me for the conversation here in the studio is Olabode Shomi. He's an energy expert and a public affairs analyst. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.
Now, also joining us via Zoom is Yushau Aliu. He's an economist and also a public affairs analyst. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you. Good evening, Nigeria.
I'll start with you, Olabode. You know, the drop in petrol importation in Nigeria. What does this really imply?
Okay, so when we talk data, information, knowledge, so those three parameters that form knowledge management, it is important for us not to come to conclusions and look for the data to support the conclusion. Rather, let us explore the data and find out what it actually means, which is how people do investigation when they want to, the police, they do investigation when they want to unravel a crime scene and all that. So we have this data. I think the solution to it in terms of getting the exact thing will actually be to interrogate the data and do proper and more investigation by checking where the previous one. So there are a number of reasons that it could be. One of it could be that the amount that was going into smuggling has stopped simply because the price differential and all that did not make it profitable. But that will also be easy way to explain it out. Another one could be that the logistics of getting it across to different parts of the country is what has hindered it. But then again, that will be easy because in many places across in the rural areas, in the smaller cities, the prices are also quite high in there. So that we are not quick to rush into the conclusion, because if it has something to do with something that is either not so legal or not ethical, the people who are behind it are not going to tell you, hey, we are the ones we used to smuggle. We are no longer smuggling. Nobody's going to tell you that. But it's important for us to actually interrogate the facts and check what percentage of these figures goes into whether smuggling or whatever activities that are stopped, what percentage goes into the rural areas, and those rural areas, either because of price differential and all that, have stopped buying. It's important for us to know what the real issues are and not be quick to come to a conclusion.
When you say don't be quick to jump into conclusion, what exactly do you mean by that?
What I'm saying is that if we don't have evidence,
yes,
there is a particular reason for it, we shouldn't assume that that's the reason for it. So the evidence will come in by virtue of research, by virtue of data gathering, by virtue of interrogating the sources of the information, by interrogating and checking where the previous volumes were going to, and all that. So there's a need for internal introspection on the matter.
Okay, from your own point of view now, we can't really, place our hands on some of the factors.
No, some of the factors are what I already mentioned. One of it could be logistics issues, being more complicated and be more expensive. And that if it's more expensive, you are going to have less people buying it. If you have less people buying it, that could result in the volumes. But we shouldn't necessarily assume that that is the fact. There is also the fact that there's a significant amount that goes into smuggling. Maybe because of the price differential and increment, that trade is no longer possible and profitable. So they are stopping. But what I'm saying is that we don't necessarily just have to come to a conclusion without hard facts, without hard data. And that is why it's important for the powers that be, whether it be the Bureau of Statistics, whether it be the NNPCL, whether it be the regulator, all the people, government and quasi-government organizations that are working around this, to actually spend some time to actually investigate it so that they have definitive figures and definitive proof that this is actually what is happening. Because when you get those proof, you are able to actually know where the issues are. Because to my mind, I don't think it will be one reason. I think it will be a plethora of reasons that will that's led to the situation that we have. But until we have definitive facts, what we can just do is make informed guesses. But there will still be guesses in terms of what the issues are.
Okay, I'll also come back to you on that. Now, Yushao, I also want to get your reaction on these, on the drop of the fuel, the petrol importation in Nigeria. What do you make, out of the entire figure? We had in 2023 total imports of 20.30 billion, while in 2022 we had 23.54 billion. So it's a significant decrease. So what do you say to that?
There is no two ways about it. My colleague has highlighted some of the basic reasons why probably there will be reduction. But if we are to be realistic, there is significant reduction. And this significant reduction is as a result of removal of subsidy. So the first point of contact is the subsidy payment. Now government is not paying subsidy, therefore all other inconsistencies that existed where the importation, the distribution, and the figures that were emanating were associated with certain level of corruptions before. Therefore, elimination of subsidy has now brought a new scenario. This is basic. The second most important is the effective demand. Effective demand, when prices go higher, there is possibility to reduce, when purchasing power is reduced, definitely consumption will also decrease. This is associated with the level of income in the economy. It is obvious when you look around your own community, anywhere you are, you see a large number of consumers that have now decided to reduce their movement. That is one. Two, there is also a reduction in the use of vehicles that are using PMS. One other factor which is yet to be pronounced is the introduction of CNG, compressed natural gas, which will obviously reduce the consumption of PMS. Lastly, in my own observation, there is also issue of inflation generally and unemployment. Many people that are going around looking for jobs, many, even those who don't even have the opportunity of having a vehicle or a motorcycle, the movement has reduced significantly. So it's not a good scenario, actually. It's not a good scenario to have a situation where the consumption is declining, because the more the consumption, the more the value for GDP. The reduction in consumption also reduce the value of GDP, because it's the monetary value of all goods and services that is within an economy. So therefore, it's not something to just celebrate because our consumption has reduced and we remain inactive. But we understand that, of course, my colleagues has mentioned that smugglers can no longer take it out, because now it's a competitive price. You cannot take it, and government is not paying subsidy, and you cannot see where you can make abnormal profit. So all these things, when you put them together, is a situation that has brought the reduction. But we, as economists, government as policymaker, must understand that the more the consumption, the better the economic performance, and also the better the GDP performance over a period of time.
Thank you very much, Yushao. Now back to you, Olabodi. As much as you say we shouldn't be quick at jumping into conclusion. However, this the decrease, we have about 13.77% year on year. You agree with me that is a significant one. Yes. Now, what role does Nigeria's oil production capacity play in this situation?
Well, it's really not direct, in the sense that most of our production is geared towards our income. Of course, some part of it is geared towards our consumption. But where it will have made a significant impact, or where it will have made the kind of impact that you're looking at, is if there was unavailability of crude, or if crude was made available for domestic use at a cheaper rate. You understand? It's not that the crude is made available at competitive rate. So were we to be in a situation where one of the reasons for the increase in prices was the unavailability of crude, then that could have been a factor. But it's not really a factor, because basically crude is available when you want to use it, and there's also, like in the case of Dangote, at some point he also imported crude for the purposes of refining. So the crude, which is the upstream aspect of the business, is having a direct input into the operations of the downstream sector, but it is not affecting it negatively in any sense. So technically, in terms of the price increase and all that, has really little to do with the fact that Nigeria is producing crude oil.
But does the drop in the petrol importation, is it a good thing?
The drop in petrol importation?
Importation, yes.
Depending on what the factors are. So if the drop in petrol importation is because of people who could no longer smuggle, then that is a good thing. If the drop in petrol importation and all that is as a result of the fact that people can no longer afford it, then that's not so good. And that is why I say that rather than us concluding, we should investigate it properly. I mean, for example, if you're an adult male in Nigeria, you probably have an idea of what malaria looks like. And sometimes you could actually treat yourself without actually testing the thing. But when it's getting to typhoid and it's getting to all other complications that could have the symptoms of malaria, it is important that you do a test. The purpose of that test is that so that you don't wrongly treat yourself and you don't injure yourself while trying to do that. So it's the same thing. So that we don't recommend and go into a solution for a problem that is not existing, or we take the wrong solution to the issues, it is important that we interrogate this. And that is what happens in virtually every developing developed country, or any growing concern as an organization. They get to the root of the matter. So in getting to the root of the matter, a lot of things come out. And when you get to the root of the matter, you are sure there's a definitive reason for it. And that really is the hard work. doing the research, doing the investigation and all that. And so we should put a critical measure of pressure, a critical amount of pressure on the agencies that are responsible for things like this so that they can do that.
But earlier, Yushao had mentioned some of the government policies put in place and said, okay, it could also be part of the factors why we're having the reduction in petrol imports. Does that not count?
I'm not sure what policy is affecting petrol, because petrol is basically, operations of,
it talks about the removal of fuel and of course the CNG buses.
Okay, so it is possible, but I don't think so, because the volume of CNG, that is CNG vehicles that is operational now, I don't think can have that kind of effect. Because if you check the amount of, the amount of, we are talking about millions of liters. So millions, and the average car, even the SUV is like 80 liters. So if you divide 80 by maybe 8 million liters, you are looking at a certain amount of vehicles. Do we have those kind of vehicles in CNG? That's just basic maths. I don't think so. So it's a factor, but I don't think it is the definitive factor that is responsible for the things we see. You see, let me repeat what I said again. There are multiple reasons that could lead to this thing, but it is important that we don't guess. That is why I'm advocating the fact that some research, some amount of work will be done so that we know what really is responsible, because it's not going to be one thing. Then they can say, okay, 0.5% of the issues goes to CNG, 11% goes to this and all that. So you really know what is happening, and I think that should be the way forward.
Now, you shall having pointed out some of the factors you feel contributory, the contributory factors to the decline in petrol imports. I would also want you to let us understand, as much as Olabode has said, we should also carry out the research, to get the factors right. Now, should this, decline continue? Should it be maintained? And let's borrow Olabode's words, and the factors are right. How would it affect the local economy and, of course, fuel prices?
Eukaria, let me just respond to Mr. Olabode. It is directly, we don't need any research. Why we don't need any research is that statistics has been conducted and there is a reduction in consumption. And if an individual is sick at any time, doctors, the first thing they do, they observed. We economists, the first thing we do, we observed. Let me confirm to you, micro study, microeconomics. As I am seated now, I am inside car. I am coming from filling station. As you are seeing me now, most of the filling stations are empty. Most of those people who are doing small scale businesses, who normally buy PMS for tailoring, for local shops, for barbers, they are not buying. So these are observed carefully. And we cannot, our observation is simple. When we mention government policy, it's of a positive. CNG is a new development, which we must be part of it. CNG, we need it so much. Personally, I am willing to have CNG attached to my car because I want to go out of PMS. There's nothing wrong with that policy. But policies that induce inflation is attached to PMS pricing. That's the concern. If Dangote is attracted to crude oil produced in Nigeria, not in dollar term, it's government policy in naira term. If Dangote will be carefully monitored and watched, so that he distribute the production evenly in the economy. It's government policy that would do that. Remember, Petroleum Industry Act is what is guiding this production. Our consumption pattern is being determined by our income. Income in Nigeria is so poor. It's so poor that, as I am speaking to you now, I put 30 liters at 1,100. That is 33,000 liters. Formerly, it was a living wage. It was a minimum wage. That wage is government policy. So these are some of the contributions that policymakers must carefully go back to NPC, must carefully go back to Bureau of Statistics, must carefully go back to the drawing board to assess the small and medium enterprises, those bakers that are not operating, those small industries that are not operating, that rely on this. Their profit margin is very important. So fiscal policies can attribute to additional capacity to purchasing power of individual, corporate organizations, and even the entire private sector. So in my own submission, it is not good to have a reduction in consumption of PMS without an alternative. If alternative exists, the CNG, by the time it has gone wide, I will join, many will join, PMS consumption will reduce from the fueling of vehicles to manufacturing. So these are some of the things.
You shall. Thank you for your submission. Now, Olabode, he's made some, points there. The CNG is part of the factors, and of course, he mentioned the reduction in, consumption and all of that. Now, what areas should more attention be paid for us to have, to encourage a further decline in fuel imports? Now, I'm also keeping in view of, I'm keeping in view the fact that you said that some of the factors should be, there should be research, even though you shall be saying there's no need for research, you can say it clearly. So you mentioned that, of course, it is a good thing.
Well, I don't know why he thinks that observation is more important than figures. I'm not sure.
Well, the figures have been given.
The figures have
These
been
are
given.
the figures,
Hold on. The figures have been given.
to us.
The figures have been given in terms of the total reduction in amount consumed. The figures does not say what is responsible for the reduction.
Okay, now let's look at the positives. Let's look at the positives.
They are all positive.
Okay.
So data is not negative. It's what you make out of it. What I'm saying is that the data is not sufficient to come to the conclusions that we are coming to, and we need to be careful that we don't allow and use data to confirm our bias. So you can have a bias for a particular reason. Let the data lead to that reason rather than trying to use the reason to interpret the data. That is the point I'm trying to make. However, if we think that is not necessary and that the data already speaks to whatever is there, then so be it. But from a professional point of view, that is what I think the nation should be doing in terms of having some proper reasons for decision making. Okay,
thank you very much. Well, with that, we end today's episode of Nigeria Today. Very big thank you to Yusha Aliu, that joined us via Zoom, an economist and public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for being part of the program.
Thank you very much.
And also I had here with me in the studio Olabode Shomi. He's an energy expert and also a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your time,
the pleasure,
your contribution. And thank you for being part of the program. Don't forget, Nigeria Today airs every weekday at 7:30 p.m. on Nta News24. You can also check out this episode for the repeat at 10 p.m. today, as well as other episodes on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. Once again, thank you for being there. I am Victoria Clinton.